These distinctive side strakes belong to one of the most famous car profiles in history. Yes, if you haven't already guessed, they belong to the Ferrari Testarossa, arguably the quintessential supercar of the 1980s. And today, in a bit of a blast from the past, we're going to drive it. The Testarossa was unveiled on the eve of the 1984 Paris Motor Show at a famous nightclub on the Champs-Élysées, announcing itself as the dramatically styled 12-cylinder successor to the 512 Berlinetta Boxer. To accompany Pininfarina's glamorous design, an evocative name was borrowed from Ferrari's racing sports cars of the late 50s and early 60s. As with those TR models, Testarossa literally translated as Redhead, referencing the red-painted cylinder heads. If missing the visual theatre of its scissor-doored and bewinged rival, the Lamborghini Countach, the strikingly straight, wedge-shaped Testarossa became an instant design icon. And it cemented its place in 80s pop culture in 1986. This was a year when a gleaming white example replaced a fake Ferrari Daytona as the undercover car of choice in ultra-stylish TV cop show Miami Vice. And the year when a red pixelated Testarossa Spider was the hero car of Sega's thoroughly addictive third-person driving game, Outrun. I can tell you I've got goosebumps just standing next to this car, and not just because I grew up with Miami Vice and Outrun. If you're of my particular vintage, you too probably had a poster of the Testarossa blue tacked to your bedroom wall, and probably alongside one of the Lamborghini Countach. Now, before the most pedantic of Ferrari aficionados start jumping in on the comment section, this is a 1992 model and it's officially called the 512 TR. But it's ostensibly a Testarossa, as that TR abbreviation denotes. And look, it's still a Redhead. The 512 TR was essentially the first major facelift for the supercar, designed to bring the Testarossa into the 1990s and literally bring it up to speed with Lamborghini's Countach replacement, the Diablo. Design changes were very subtle. The wheels were now 18 rather than 16 inches in size, and by now featuring a 5-bolt design rather than a single nut, though the 5-spoke rims otherwise kept faithful to the star rims of the original Testarossa. At the front, the TR mirrored the front end of Ferrari's V8-powered 348 through a curvier grille and a separated grouping of side, driving and indicator lights. The front apron and sills now matched the colour of the main body, while at the rear the sailplane buttresses were extended right to the edge of the rear deck. The wedge shape remained untouched though, as did the retractable pop-up headlights and of course those distinctive strakes and the super wide, squared off rear end. The most extensive revisions were made under the skin. The ride height was lowered, the suspension was tweaked for a more refined ride and the engine revised. Well, one of the first things to say is how easy it is to get into this car, even though it's super low. There's a very sort of wide but very flat door sill and you just fall into this bucket seat. Beautiful soft black leather, ribbed. Yeah, you can really sort of feel the bolstering, so yeah, you don't want to be much more wider hipped than Don Johnson, I'd say. Driving position, let's check with the pedals, clutch right down. So my legs, I'd say, are in the perfect position for me in terms of the distance. Steering wheel though, my arms haven't, I'd have to reach forward to get them in the perfect position, so that's not quite ideal. The only adjustment you get is rake, not telescopic. The cabin of the Testarossa, through all 3 variants that were produced over the years, they didn't really change a great deal between those models. Biggest difference, I would say, between Testarossa and this TR model, the centre stack is gone, which is right down here, which had all various gauges. Still got gauges, but they're now in this sort of neater, tidier looking pod just here. Engine temperature, fuel gauge, even a clock. Centre console, yeah, that's a little bit tidier than it was on the Testarossa. Not quite so many buttons. We don't have a cassette tape holder here though, as you did get in the Testarossa, or maybe it was an accessory for the TR, I'm not sure. A couple of little quirks on the dash here in the middle. Lift up the flap, there's your audio system. It's almost like Ferrari is a bit embarrassed to have an audio system that you could see in your beautiful Testarossa. And also on the dash, but we just have to turn on the accessories here. because there's a button you press on the center console. Look at that! Vanity mirror! How cool is that? You could still secure an optional set of Italian leather holdalls via straps behind the seats, with other bags in the set able to be stored under the front bonnet. There was a tweak to the look of the steering wheel, but it remained a 3-spoker. And importantly, there's still the open gate shifter, taking pride of place in the centre of the cabin. That gear stick just looks like it's begging to be used, so let's see if the 512 TR, or Testarossa 2.0 as you might also call it, is as much of an event to drive as it is to look at. We've got dual side mirrors, and one of the quirks of the original Testarossa, that it only had a single driver's mirror, and it was high up on the A-pillar, somewhere about here. Very controversial, certainly didn't do a lot for the symmetry of the Testarossa's design. And funny enough, a few years later, Ferrari obviously also decided that wasn't such a good idea, and they gave the Testarossa dual side mirrors, similar design, but also positioned a little bit lower down in the more conventional position in the corner of the doors where they meet the A-pillars. And that's also what we've got on the TR model, that carried over, and there's plenty of electric adjustment over the side here. But something I really notice in those side mirrors, those rear haunches, they're quite dominant. And I kind of love that because it really reminds you of the car that you're driving. At the time, it was said to be the widest production car on the road, the Testarossa. But there's just nothing remotely intimidating about driving this car at visibility. The only intimidating thing about it is manoeuvring it at low speeds. There's no power steering, and it's really hard work. I would not take this into a car park. Try and avoid 3-point turns if you can. Turning circle also pretty dreadful. But we're out on the open road, and this is absolutely the domain for a legendary 1980s supercar. The supercar's width was dictated more by function than form. In a radical engineering change to overcome cabin overheating issues suffered by Ferrari's previous mid-engine flat-12 models, the radiators were moved from the front to the sides for the first Testarossa. This move had the extra bonus of freeing up extra luggage space under the front bonnet. The 512 TR's engine is also wide, still the legendary flat 12 cylinder that's technically a 180-degree V12. Among several revisions over the original Testarossa, the engine and its gearbox were mounted 30mm lower to improve the supercar's centre of gravity. The footwell is very cramped actually, and I can barely get my size 10 foot across to the left footrest. The clutch pedal, very heavy at low speeds. I almost strained my left calf muscle earlier doing it. But once you're up and running, well, apart from a first and second shift, that does feel a little bit weird because you're going from bottom left and up and across to second. But once you're in second gear and above, you can really enjoy this open gate shifter. It's a really satisfying action. So mechanical. There's nothing stiff about the lever's action, and the clutch pedal is less effort at speed. Yet the faster the driver shifts, the smoother and more rewarding the 5-speed manual feels. Forget autos or even the F1 style pedal shift levers that would debut in the late 1990s. This is the most magical way to interact with Ferrari's flat 12. The 12 cylinders changes from the Testarossa to this 512 TR, which included more sophisticated engine management system that improved power from 290 kilowatts to 315 kilowatts, which, okay, some of you might say, so what? But hey, at the time, even in the early 90s, that's a lot. And it was certainly enough to make a significant change in performance. A whole second was wiped off the Testarossa's 0 to 100 km/h time, from 5.8 seconds to 4.8 for this TR. But it's just the magical feel and sound of this engine. It's actually quite flexible. We're just going along in 4th gear at the moment, and it's more than happy. The peak power is delivered at 6,715. Now that's a little bit higher than the 6,300 RPM where it was produced in the Testarossa, which sounds quite a bit low for a Ferrari. So 6,750, a little bit more respectable. But let's try and get towards those revs and see what happens. We're going to change it down into second. Here we go. Oh, what a sound. What a sound. As you would expect for a Ferrari engine, the harder you rev this naturally aspirated 4.9 litre, the better it sounds, howling away as you explore the TR's top-end performance. Perhaps one of the most surprising things for me about this 512 TR is just how comfortable it is to drive. Beyond the very snug leather seats, the ride quality is amazing. There's quite a lot of compliance, and I guess that really just proves that Ferrari intended this car very much as a GT car, much more than, say, the F40, which came along in '87 and was a racing car for the road effectively. Much more hardcore, faster, turbocharged. The Testarossa wasn't quite finished there though. In 1994, the 512 TR transitioned into the F512M as Ferrari reintroduced its favoured F prefix while adding M for modificato. The word modified has never sounded so beautiful, though it was also relevant. Aerodynamics, performance, suspension and braking were among key areas of improvement, though many lamented design changes that included a move to faired-in headlights and a return to more traditional circular tail lights. The F512M is also the rarest Testarossa, with only 501 built. Replaced after just 2 years by the front-engined V12 550 Maranello, it ended a 25-year era of mid-engined flat-12 production cars. In total, nearly 10,000 units of the Redhead series were produced between 1984 and 1996, making it a hugely successful model in Ferrari's V12 lineage. The Testarossa and its derivatives, though, were never widely regarded as one of the greatest Ferraris of all time. Yet, it certainly remains one of the coolest. We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we enjoyed putting it together. Give us a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and why not subscribe? It's totally free. How would you like to own this stunning example from Ferrari's legendary Testarossa series? This 1992 512 TR is headlining Chrome Temple Motors' Vehicle of Distinction's online auction event, which is running from 18th of August to 1st of September. Presented in a particularly rare black-on-black specification, this right-hand drive model also has less than 27,000 kilometres on the clock. Equipment includes fully working air conditioning, electric windows and electric mirrors. Head to chrometemple.com/motors for more details on how to bid on the 512 TR, as well as other enticing models among an impressive auction catalogue.